Oh, sorry, I forgotten to record till now. Okay, when we come to the architecture of this Google file system, see, when we come to the Google file system, a Google file system is composed of clusters. Okay, a Google file system is a combination of and a number of clusters will be there. General meaning of what is a cluster? Generally, a cluster means a group. Okay, a Google file system is a combination of number of clusters. Clear. Again, when we come to the each cluster, a Google file system is a group of clusters. And when we come to each cluster, a cluster is a set of networked computer. That means each cluster is a set of networked computers. Networked computers means connected computers, which are connected with one another. Each cluster will contain hundreds to thousands number of machines will be there. Each cluster can contain hundreds to thousands of machines. Okay, each cluster will contain some hundreds to thousand number of machines will be there, which are connected with one another. Okay, that is called one cluster. Like this, the Google file system will contain a number of clusters will be there in the Google file system. Clear. The Google file system is a combination of clusters, and each cluster is a combination of some number of networked computers. Simply in our words, a Google file system is a combination of clusters, whereas each cluster is a combination of some number of networked computers. The cluster may contain 100 to thousands of machines will be depending on the size of the cluster. Hundreds to thousand number of machines will be there. Computer machines will be there, which are connected to one another. And when we come to each cluster, okay, each cluster is divided has three entities will be there in each cluster. When we come to the GFS cluster, there are three main entities are there in each cluster. What are those entities means? Every cluster has three entities will be there. First one is client, next master server, next trunk server. Each cluster will contain three things. Client machine will be there, master server will be there, chunk servers will be there. Every cluster will contain a combination of these three. Clear. Briefly, the architecture will be like this. This is the master server. Okay, next this is the client machine which wants to communicate store its file in the servers. Next, these are the chunk servers. These three are the chunk servers. Here example he has given three chunk servers. Like that, some number of chunk servers will be there, one master server will be there, and clients will be there. Server will be there as well as the chunk will be there. Okay, we have to know what is the role of chunk servers, what is the role of master server, what is the role of the clients. Next, when we come to the first entity, client. Okay, can you guess what is the duty of the client? When we come to the client part is very well known to us. What is the duty of the client? Okay, whenever the client want to store his files in the GFS, he will communicate with the server. Okay, the duty of the client is either he want to store some files in the Google file system, or he want to access already stored files in the Google file system. Only two works will be there for the client generally. One is he want to store new files in the Google file system. That is one task. Or he want to access the existing already stored files in the file system. Already ఎప్పుడో ఫైల్ ప్లేస్ చేశాడు, దాన్ని మోడిఫై చేయాలి, అలా రీడ్ చేయాలి. Read and write operations on the files, as well as creation and storing of a new file. Generally, the clients will have these two things only. Clear. Clients are the computers or computer applications, okay, which are used for manipulating existing files or creating new files. Clients can be the computers or computer applications, okay, that are manipulating existing files. That means that are performing operations on existing files or creating new files on the system. Already I told you the client has only two works will be there. Either he want to create a new file to store new data, or he want to manipulate the existing file. That means he want to do some work on the existing file. Okay, who are these clients? They are again the computers only. Okay, they are the computer machines or applications that are running on the computer machines who want to access the files. Clear. Next, the client will communicate with master server as well as the chunk servers to read and write data. Whenever the client want to read or write the data, he will communicate with the master server and the chunk servers. Clear. First, client will interact with master server for metadata operations. That means client will communicate with master server to know information about the chunk servers. Metadata means data about the data. See, generally what will happen is actually data will be stored in the chunk servers. Actually, where your data will be stored means your data will be stored, your files will be stored in the chunk servers. Okay, in which chunk server your data is stored, that information is available with the master server. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మీరు ఒక ఫైల్ క్రియేట్ చేస్తాను అనుకోండి, ఫైనల్ సిఎస్సి ఫైల్ యూ వాంట్ టు స్టోర్. ఆ ఫైల్ యాక్చువల్గా ఎవరి దగ్గర స్టోర్ అవుతుంది అంటే చంక్ సర్వర్ విల్ స్టోర్ దట్ ఫైల్. మరి చంక్ సర్వర్స్ చాలా ఉన్నాయి మనకి. ఇందా ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మనం ఇందా చూసామండి, ఏబిసి 3 ఉన్నాయి. అలా నెంబర్ ఆఫ్ చంక్ సర్వర్స్ విల్ బి దేర్. మరి చంక్ సర్వర్స్ లో ఏ సర్వర్ లో మీ ఫైల్ ఉందంటే ఆ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఎవరి దగ్గర ఉంటుంది? దట్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఈస్ అవైలబుల్ ఎట్ ద మాస్టర్ సర్వర్. Master server will not actually store the files. Okay, only he will store the information about the files, where the files has stored. Clear. So client will interact with the master for metadata, and for actual data he will communicate with the chunk server. Clear the points. Client will interact with the master server for metadata operation. That means here metadata means information about the files. He will communicate with the master, and to access the data he will communicate with the chunk server. The client will interact with both master server as well as the chunk server depending on his requirement. Okay, whenever he want to access the files, first he will go to master. I want to access my file for CSC. Then master will give information, your fourth CSC is available at the server 7. So simply client will go to the chunk server 7 and he can access the data. Clear. Similarly, whenever the client wants to store a new file, first he will go to master. I want to store a new file for CSC. Then master server will identify how many chunk servers are available currently, and he will pass that information to the client. These chunk servers are now available. Clear. Then client will interact with the chunk servers and he will store the data in the chunk servers. That means master is not directly storing the data. He is only storing the metadata. He is providing information about the chunk servers only. Clear, guys? Clients, what is the role of the client? This is briefly the role of client machine. Brief and client. Simply 2 points will be there for a client. One is either he want to store a new file or he want to operate on the existing file. Clear. He will communicate with both master server and client server, chunk server, for doing his operations, whether creating a new file or reading the file, existing file, or writing the existing file. He will communicate with master server as well as the chunk servers. He will communicate with master server for getting metadata, and he will communicate with the chunk server to get the actual data. Is it clear, guys? Briefly, the role of the clients. The clients are nothing but the machines only. They are also the computer machines. Okay, we are the machines. Okay. Is it clear, guys? Briefly about the clients. Now we have to know about the what is the role of the master server. We have briefly seen the role of the chunk server client. Now what is the role of this master server? What he will do? Guys, follow అవుతున్నారండి? When we come to the master server, okay, the name itself indicating he can be treated as a coordinator for the cluster or manager for the cluster. We can assume the master server as a coordinator or manager for the entire cluster. The cluster is a combination of some number of machines will be there. Among all those machines, this server machine, master server machine, is act as a manager for that cluster or coordinator for that cluster. He can be treated as a coordinator or manager for that cluster or head of the department for that cluster. Okay, one of the main duty of the master server is to maintain operation log. One duty of this master server is he has to maintain the operational log. What is this operation log contains means the operation log will store. I think you have idea about the logbook. Log in the DBMS you got the points log file. గుర్తుందండి. DBMS లో మీకు లాగ్ ఫైల్ వచ్చి ఉంటుందండి. You have some idea about the log. When we come to this operation log file అంటాం మన ల్యాబ్ లోకి వచ్చినప్పుడు లాగ్ ఫైల్ రాస్తాం. ఆ లాగ్ ఫైల్ లో ఏముంటుంది లాగ్ బుక్ లో ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ who came to the lab, at what time they came to the lab, yeah, on which system they are working, next when they left the lab, all the information will be stored in that log book. Similarly here also the master server will maintain a log operation log book. Okay, he will maintain the operation log. What is this operation log contains means whatever the activities that are going on this cluster, on that particular cluster, all those activities will be registered in this operation log. Clear? All the activities that are going in that cluster will be noted down in that operation log. Clear? What is this log contains? The main duty of the master server is, one of his main duties is he has to maintain the operation log, which keep track of all the activities that are going in that cluster. That means how many chunk servers are there in this cluster. Okay, in each chunk server, which files we have stored, the files belongs to whom, whose files we have stored in our chunk servers, who are those clients, at what time we have stored, what is the size of these files, where they have stored. Okay, when what operation has performed on those chunks, like that all the information, whatever the activities going in that cluster, that information will be recorded in this operation log. It is the one important duty of the master server to maintain the operation log. Clear? What is the use of this maintaining this operation log? Can anyone give an answer? What is the use of maintaining this operation log? ఇలా లాగ్ మెయింటైన్ చేయడం వల్ల అడ్వాంటేజ్ ఏంటి? అలా మనం నోట్ చేసుకోవడం వల్ల వచ్చిన అడ్వాంటేజ్ అండి. వాట్ ఈస్ గోయింగ్ ఆన్, ఎవ్రీ వర్క్ ఈస్ రికార్డ్ ఇన్ ద ఆపరేషన్ లాగ్. వాట్ ఈస్ ద బెనిఫిట్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ వన్ ఈస్, okay, easy identification is some point. Okay, any more? Yeah, it gives complete details. What is the use of getting those complete details? My question is, you are right, you are in the path. It gives complete details. What is the use of getting the complete details? See, it is related to the point called fault tolerance. Already I told you one point called fault tolerance. What is meant by fault tolerance? Even though some of the components are not working, the system should not stop the entire operation. The operation should go on even though some of the components fail to work. That is called fault tolerance. And we already told you GFS will provide the fault tolerance. That means by maintaining this operational log, what is the advantage is, even though whenever the master server failed to work, whenever the master server failed to work, with the help of this operation log, alternative master server will run the process. The process of GFS will not be stopped, even though the main server has down, the process will not be stopped. Clear? That is the advantage of this one. Whenever your master server is down, immediately alternative master server will continue the work with the help of this operation log. For example, like in our college, okay, if one HOD has resigned the department, what will happen? With the help of the operation log, another person HOD will come to the department and he will continue the works without any break. Otherwise, what will happen if operation log is not maintained? When a new per HOD came to the department, he don't know anything. What is the present situation? He don't know. What is the present situation? What works I have to continue? He don't know anything. If we maintain the operation log, even though current employee resigned from the college, the process will not be stopped. New employee will come to that place. By seeing that operation log, happily he will continue those works. Clear? Similarly here also, whenever master server is down, the alternative server will run the process with the help of the operation log. Okay, the entire process will not be disturbed. That is, it is providing the fault tolerance. Even though one system is failed, okay, one master server is failed, remaining alternative master server will continue the work. That is the main advantage of maintaining this operation log. There is no interrupts in the service. Okay, The operation log helps keep service interruptions to a minimum. If the master server crashes, a replacement server has monitored the operation log can take its place. Clear. Whenever the master server is down, okay, a replacement server will continue the work. It will take its place by the help of this operation log, so that for the client there is no problem at all. Even the master server is down, for the client he don't have any problem. Happily it will go on. Clear the point. What is this operation log? Another important point about the master server is, along with the operation log, he has to maintain one more thing called metadata. The master server has to maintain another information called the metadata. Guys, is it clear about the operation log? What is it, whether use of this operation log? Now, another important duty of the master server is the maintaining of metadata. What is this metadata contains? But in metadata mean, already we know metadata means data about the data. That means here the master server also has to maintain the what is the data about the files that are stored in the chunk server. We know the chunk server, the files will be actually stored in the chunk servers. The information about those files which are in chunk servers must be maintained by the master server only. Clear. The other duty of the master server is he has to maintain the metadata about the chunks. Generally, whenever we are want to store a file, new file in the file system, what will happen is, first the files will be divided into fixed size chunks, fixed size partitions. I think in the OS you know about the partitions, fixed size partition, variable size partitions. వినే ఉంటారండి OS లో కాన్సెప్ట్స్ వచ్చి ఉంటాయి మీకు ఐడియా ఉన్నాయండి ఫిక్స్డ్ సైజ్ partitions and variable size partitions. Okay, generally the files are divided into fixed size parts. Each part is called a chunk. Okay, whenever we want to store a new file, the file will be divided into fixed size chunks. Okay, and generally the size of each chunk is a 64 MB. Okay, the size of each chunk is generally 64 MB. It will divide the file into the partitions of size 64 MB. Every part will have a unique size of 64 MB. Generally it will take. I will give you the complete details about how the files are stored. We will get again. Okay, currently here, remember, files are divided into 64 size chunks, and whenever the file is divided into the fixed size chunks, for each chunk, to identify each chunk, the master will give some unique 64-bit chunk handle. The master will assign a 64-bit chunk handle. Simply chunk handle means nothing but the name, unique name for that chunk. We can call it as the address for the chunk or name for the chunk. Okay, for example, the file is divided into 4 fixed size chunks, A, B, C, D. I divided the file into 4 parts. And what is the master will do? When I divide my file into 4 parts of equal size chunk, the master server will give names to those files. Okay, first file is called as chunk A, second file is called chunk B, third file is called chunk C, fourth file. So fourth part is called chunk D. Like that, for that file which is divided into fixed size chunks, to identify each chunk, it will give some unique names. It is called as the unique 64-bit chunk handle. We call the name as a chunk handle. Clear. What is this chunk handle means? Nothing but the simply in our language name of the chunk. Identification of that chunk, ID of that chunk is called the chunk handle. Clear, Andy? Okay, this is briefly the duty of this master server. The main duties of the master server is to maintain operation log, to maintain metadata, and whenever chunks are created, to provide unique ID to each chunk. These are the main responsibilities of the master server. Is it clear, guys? Briefly, what is this master server has to do? Clear, Andy? What is this master server is going to do? One is it has to maintain the operation log, so that whenever the server down, remaining servers will other server will take its duty. The other duty is to maintain the metadata. Metadata is nothing but the data about the chunks. Okay, where the chunks are stored, how the chunks are stored. That metadata it has to maintain about the chunks. And one more duty of the master is whenever the chunks are created, it has to give some unique name for each chunk. Okay, why? Because in the file system, hundreds of files will be stored, and each file will be divided into number of chunks. That means hundreds and thousands of chunks will be there. To identify each chunk, some unique name should be given. That is, unique chunk handle should be given by the master. Clear? These are the duties of the chunk master server. Next, we have to briefly know about another one called the chunk servers. The third one is the chunk servers. When we come to the chunk server, these are the actual workhorses of JFS. Workhorses means actually who is working in the Google file system. Means these are the actual persons who is working in the Google file system. Okay, these are called as the workhorses for the Google file system. Okay, chunk servers will store the chunks on the local disk as Linux files. Okay, chunk servers are the machines where actually the file chunks are stored. Already I told you, whenever we want to store a file, the file will be divided into the number of chunks. Where those chunks are actually stored means the chunks are actually stored in the chunk servers. In which format they are stored means they are stored in the local disk as a Linux files. Generally, chunk servers are working on the Linux operating system. The chunk servers will operate in the Linux operating system, and the chunks of the files will be stored in the local disk of the chunk servers. Local disk means nothing but a local hard disk. Okay, each chunk size will be 64 MB. Every chunk size will be the 64 MB. See, the chunk servers do not send chunks to the master server. Chunk servers will not send the chunks to the master server. Instead, they send the requested chunks directly to the client. Okay, guys, only 1 minute is less than 1 minute is there. Okay, again, I will send you the ID and password. We will connect and we will discuss briefly 5 minutes about this chunk servers and we will wind up. Clear? Again, I will send you the ID and password. We will discuss the chunk servers, then we will wind up today. Clear? Why? Because the time is less than 1 second. In the few seconds, the slide is the meeting will be wind up.